In today's video, I'm going to share 10 lessons that I've learned from 10 years of mountain biking, tips that could help you ride better, set up your bike better, and enjoy the sport even more. I started riding mountain bikes as a young kid, and then at 18 years old, I made the decision to move full-time into a van to pursue a life focused on riding bikes. And for the last 5 years, I've had the opportunity to call mountain biking my job. It's been a wild ride, and I have learned a ton of things along the way that I wish I'd known from the start. So if you're looking to improve your riding, let's dive into this. Lesson number 1, find ways to maximize your descent time, either through going to a bike park or through riding an e-bike. Obviously, going to a bike park and riding an e-bike are different activities, but in my mind, they kind of accomplish the same goal to some extent, and that is that they allow you to focus on your descending abilities while minimizing the fatigue that you get from pedaling back up the hill on an analog bike. As a result of being able to focus more on your descending abilities while being less fatigued, you're able to rapidly improve your bike skill, in my personal opinion. And additionally, riding fatigued can be pretty dangerous. It's much easier to crash when you're tired, and it can promote bad habits in your riding. And these two reasons are why e-bikes and going to a bike park are an absolutely clutch move to get better at riding, in my opinion. Building off of lesson number 1, which is all about how to maximize the time that you have descending, my second lesson in today's video is to use your front brake. This may seem really simple, but hey, we got to talk about it. For me, when I was younger and started to go to the bike park, I had no idea that you were supposed to be using your front brake. I just thought that thing would make me go over the bars, and I had no idea the true power that lied in the front brake. So before I make the following statement and you run to the comments to argue with me, this is coming from the AI overview on Google. It's just what it's saying. And it's saying that your front brake is 70 to 80% of your power. And from personal experience, I couldn't agree more. With a lot of the really steep lines that I ride now out here in southern Utah, all of my focus is on my front brake. The rear brake is there too, but the front brake is the real money maker, and honestly, a true lifesaver in my opinion, because if I fall on some of the stuff I ride, it would be really, really bad. So use your front brake. I've made the mistake of growing up not using it, so learn from my mistakes and use that front brake. Lesson number 3, commit to learning how to set up your bike properly. In my opinion, a lot of bike setup comes down to personal preference, so I'm not here to tell you that there's necessarily a right or a wrong way to set up your bike, but I'd say there are some good general practices to follow. And at least for me, when I was younger, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing with my bike setup. For instance, I'll vividly remember one day riding the bike park, my homie felt my fork and it just felt like absolute garbage to him. And he was like, dude, what are you doing, man? And I was like, dude, I kept bottoming out my fork, so I just turned the compression knob all the way to help out. Little did I know, you could have used a volume spacer, or I could have even just adjusted my air pressure, but I didn't know any better. So thankfully, that friend, his name is David Lieb. He's a great mountain biker, and I'd recommend checking out his content. He tossed some volume spacers in my fork, adjusted my air pressure. We went back out for another lap, and holy, I was mind blown by how much better my fork felt and how much better I was able to ride as a result of this suspension change. So all this is to say, I'd really recommend committing some time to learning how to set up your bike properly. There's a ton of performance gains to be made there, and it will really help you enjoy mountain biking a little bit more, in my opinion. Lesson number 4, also on the topic of bike setup, and I'm sure this is going to be a controversial one down in the comment section, and that is that rebound isn't what's bucking you, it is your spring rate. So let me explain. So over the years, a lot of people who I really respect told me to read this book. It's Racetech's Motorcycle Suspension Bible. And last spring, I finally dove into it, and the chapter on rebound was really mind-blowing to me. So I'm just going to read you a quick portion of this chapter now. So what the book says here is that for dirt, there is also the symptom of kicking. It is the most commonly misdiagnosed problem on the rear end. It is thought to be a lack of rebound damping, while in fact, it is usually caused by either excessive stiffness or excessive bottoming. So the bike kicks, and to fix it, they slow the rebound. The rider will likely think that the quote-unquote kicking is solved, and especially if the rider is prone to thinking that slowing the rebound will cure the problem. The next line is that the rider never recognizes that he lost traction and gets used to the new feel. And here it says, therefore, at the highest point of traction, the bike will wiggle around a little more than feels comfortable for many riders. And that is what this whole new feel is talking about that I just mentioned. At least for me, I was one of the many people, I'm sure, that thought getting bucked was as a result of the rebound. So I always wanted to ride slow rebound, but I didn't know that I was losing out on so much traction as a result of that. Lesson number 5, tires are your first form of suspension. Similar to how it is a good idea to have your suspension pressures and settings written down so you know where they are at, I feel the same way about my tire pressure. So for me, I have a really hard time riding my bike unless I've checked my tire pressure with a digital gauge beforehand, because your tire pressure greatly impacts the feel of your bike, as your tires are the main point of contact, actually the only point of contact between your bike and the ground, and they have a massive impact on how your bike's gonna feel. Lesson 6, commit to learning how to work on your own bike. Riding a bike that is dialed is infinitely more fun than riding a bike that's having issues. There's nothing worse than getting out on the trail and realizing that something on your bike is not working properly. Spending the time to learn how to do your own maintenance and doing a quick pre-ride check goes a long way and is going to help you have a way better time out there on the trail. On the topic of bike maintenance, the 7th lesson for today is to use a sealant injector. This may seem pretty simple and straightforward, but doing a tire install without a sealant injector, it just is horrible. It's not fun. Having to toss the sealant in the side of the tire and then install the tire onto the rim is just an absolute mess, and it does not work well. Using a sealant injector saves you such a mess. It just makes life way easier, and I cannot recommend it enough. I use this one from Park Tool. I just paid full price for this. It'll be linked in the description if you'd like to check it out. And it's an absolute lifesaver. If you want to go one step further, I'd also recommend actually bedding your tire without sealant first, just to make sure everything is sealed up, and that way no sealant will get out whatsoever. Maybe a little bit out of the valve, but for the most part, it's going to be a really clean time, and your tire install is going to be really straightforward. Lesson number 8, carbon is not always better. When I was a young Grom, I would always be reading the Decline Buyer's Guide that would come out around Christmas every single year. I loved flipping through the pages, seeing all the products, and personally, I was always attracted to the expensive carbon bling. I mean, why wouldn't I be? I thought it was dope and it was expensive, so of course you want that on your bike. But as I've come to learn through the years of riding a ton of carbon parts, ton of aluminum parts, carbon is not always better, although it is more expensive. Yes, most of the time it is lighter, but really what it comes down to is that they have much different ride characteristics, and it's important to do some research about those different ride characteristics before you make a purchase for, a different handlebar or wheel set or whatever it is that you're looking to add to your bike or change, whatever it may be. It's just good to know that carbon and aluminum ride differently, and that more expensive is not always better. It's just good to know what's going to fit the best for your bike and your preferences. Lesson number 9 is begin to spend some time to understand the concepts of reach and stack to help you find the perfect bike fit. As someone who's ridden a ton of different bikes over the last decade, I can attest that when you find a bike that fits really, really well, there's really nothing better. And at least for me, I'm okay if a bike is too small, but if a bike is too big, that's just something that personally I really struggle with. And now with bike sizing and setup, as I mentioned earlier in the video, there's not necessarily a right or a wrong way to do it. So you really just need to find what works well for you. So I think familiarizing yourself with the concepts of reach and stack and understanding those numbers for maybe bikes you've ridden in the past and what your opinions are of those bikes would be a good thing to do, just so that as you go to buy a bike in the future, you can be a little bit more informed of how the bike is going to feel when you're looking at that bike's geometry chart. Lesson number 10 and the final part of today's video, and this builds perfectly off of lesson number 9, and that is to make sure you're leveraging the changes that you can make with your cockpit setup to improve or change the fit of your bike. Changing what length stem and what handlebar rise you have on your bike can make a huge difference in how the bike handles, and it is way cheaper and easier to change those things than it is to change your full frame. So it's much better to start there to try to improve the fit of your bike, and it's a good thing to just mess around with to understand how those changes can affect your bike's handling. For example, on my e-bike just yesterday, I swapped from a 40 mil stem to a 32 mil stem just to give myself a bit more control over the front end of the bike. And before, I really struggled to pop manuals on this thing, and then swapping to an 8 mil shorter stem gave me way more leverage, and I was able to pop a manual up in the driveway no problem. So small change, big difference in my opinion. It's worth trying it out. So those are 10 of the biggest things that I've learned from a decade of mountain biking. Whether you're new to the sport or you've been riding for years, I hope you're able to find a few of these helpful. If you enjoyed today's video and would like to see more videos like it, whether it be tips, bike breakdowns, or riding vlogs, please consider subscribing so you don't miss any future uploads, and we'll catch you next Monday for a new video. Peace.